Welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast with Ron and Kristin, where leadership meets entertainment. This podcast features stories with names and certain aspects that have been changed to keep submissions private. Enjoy the show.
Welcome back to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast, where leadership meets entertainment. And today, the entertainment is spicy. I'm Kristin, joined as always by my co-host, Ron Ward. And on this episode, we are diving in to one of the most intriguing and emotionally charged topics out there, romantic betrayal. Why we love, why we hurt, and why we stay.
That's right, Kristin. Romantic betrayal is one of the oldest storylines in history, from Shakespeare to Netflix. And today we brought in one of the smartest people we know. She's an expert on many things, including romantic betrayal. Dr. Merissa Ferrara Elisei.
All right. We're excited to have you here.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
So, folks, not only is Dr. Merissa an award-winning professor and interpersonal skills expert, she's also the executive director of coaching here at Forward Operations. Merissa, we are thrilled to have you. This is a topic that everyone should just absolutely stay tuned and listen to, because you are not going to be bored whatsoever.
That's for
no
sure.
Pressure. No pressure.
No pressure.
And I've seen your, you in person, and man, you were definitely my favorite when we went to the Forward. What was your convention called, Ron? The
Leadership
Forward
and Entrepreneur
Operations
Conference.
Yeah, it was so wonderful, and you were so awesome and captivating, and you had people up on their feet moving around. So I am a believer in what you do and what you know. So I can't wait to glean something from you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, this is great. All right, let's start at the beginning. Merissa, you've got extensive knowledge on romantic betrayal, and I want to ask you a two-part question here, maybe three-part.
Okay.
What got you interested in that topic? And was there a moment where you thought, yep, this is what I'm going to delve into, and throw in any personal stories you'd like? Gossip.
Always fun to be recorded telling personal stories, Ron. So, it all goes back to that time in my senior year of college. I was at Marquette University, and I had 4 roommates. We met randomly, got randomly assigned for our freshman year, and that was back before Instagram you got to pair people in advance and stuff. And But we met and we stayed together all 4 years, and I needed a topic for my advanced interpersonal course my senior year. And I just thought it was so interesting that this group of 4 that expanded to kind of this group of 8 girls together, we all saw romantic betrayal differently. One person broke up with them. If they said they were going to call it, the person was going to call at 5 and they waited till 5:15 to call, she broke up with them because she felt that it was betrayal. And then the other one always took the guy back no matter what he did. And it became this cycle of kind of just a terrible actually cycle. And so I just kind of wrote this paper because I was curious about how romantic betrayal, how it's defined, what are the types of romantic betrayal, and then after it occurs, what are kind of the pieces that help somebody recover after betrayal.
Wow.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Oh my gosh, I'm loving this. It reminds me of
fun.
Sex in the City.
Yes, exactly.
Seriously.
Yes, that's exactly. You just picture if you have ever sat in a dorm room late at night, just talking about all of the things and trying to problem solve it together. And so I just wrote a paper on it, and my advisor at the time knew I wrote the paper, and he was like, you should go to graduate school to study this. They're really starting to get into something called the dark side of interpersonal communication, and just study these aspects of deception, betrayal, mistrust, gossip. Everything's really great when everybody's in love and happy, but the fun stuff is in the dark side, which works well with you all, with the dirty side of leadership.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Hey, Kristin,
And,
just quickly, I thought you were going to find out if the girl that broke up for being 50 minutes late was still single, and you could connect me because.
Oh my gosh, you'd be okay with that because you'd be early.
Exactly. Kristin knows I'm a stickler on time. I thought you were going to do that to me.
Oh, no. I was just like, oh, that sounds like an issue. I don't know.
Yeah. She was just so good at holding people to high standards. She was just like, this is, my time is valuable and it shouldn't surprise you. She is doing really well. Her career has taken off because she.
Well, good.
Yeah.
That's amazing. How's the other one doing?
She learned, had some valuable lessons to learn, but is doing well now. So
well, good. Happy to hear it. That's a tough one to come out of. So when people hear betrayal, they usually think cheating, but betrayal comes in many forms. I've been learning this as I was preparing for your interview. Now, in your research, what's the most surprising type of betrayal that people don't even realize counts?
It's a good question because it was like, as I was sifting through all of these stories. So basically for my research, people submitted the stories of betrayal, and then, we went from there. And I mean, it was so just such a dark space to be in, but it was fascinating because I pictured so many people talking about cheating, as you said, in that traditional sense. But one of the most surprising forms is really the emotional absence. So, when a partner stays physically present in the space, but is emotionally checked out over time. I don't know if you can, there's all the, when it happens to you, you can watch, as you said, Netflix earlier, you see it happening and you can feel what that feels like because you've experienced emotional absence. And so we tend to picture betrayal as a single dramatic event, an affair, a huge lie, a secret life that is going on behind closed doors. But most people experience chronic low-grade betrayals is what we call them. So this kind of that feeling that nobody shows up when it really matters, or maybe, sharing private information with family or friends after promising they wouldn't, or choosing work or substances over screen time, perhaps over the relationship.
Wow. So much of that happening, especially nowadays.
Yeah, it really is.
So we see that it's very layered, and I get that. But, we are where I guess leadership meets entertainment. So we want to delve into one of the big questions. And ironically, I had a friend of mine call me a couple weeks ago, and his daughter's husband had cheated, and they're gonna end it. But he was, of course, wanting to strangle the guy, and we had to talk through that. So let's delve into that one. And we know there was a show, Cheaters. It's just intriguing, and it probably has been since the beginning of time. But why do people cheat, Merissa?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have that much time. It's why do people cheat? It's we usually think. I mean, certainly there are those times of opportunity, right? But usually, what happens is that it's never just one thing. So the research points that there's a mix of individual factors, relationship factors, and situational factors, to be honest. But most of the time, it's this breaking this sense that, that you basically start to realize that they don't have your back or that you don't matter. And it usually starts off with this idea that you don't know me. You're not having this up-to-date information on me. And so as a result, I feel less than, and I start to go out and look for those other spaces and places where I feel that way. And so that's a little bit of it, but in general, which topics do you want to talk about? We can talk about relationship dissatisfaction or low barriers. So people who travel a lot, or have access. We can talk about the people who kind of personal attitudes. There's a lot of research that says, maybe Ron, since are you still single?
Yeah.
Just figured I'd ask.
The way you responded, Ron.
I didn't know if I was being set up for something there.
Well, perhaps say you go on these first dates. One of these good questions to screen people on is how do they see monogamy as a whole? What is their perception on cheating? Because they find that if you hold these deep-seated beliefs that communication can heal all, or monogamy is unrealistic, or everybody cheats if they get away with it, you can kind of build your own belief scale around the idea of cheating, and people who answer those with a little bit more gray area are going to feel more comfortable with the idea of cheating.
Kristin, I have one follow-up. And
do it.
Merissa, I know this has been a long time since you actually did your thesis, but Was there a difference, a gender difference? Because I have to be honest, there is the locker room talk, and not lately, but I'm saying I grew up around guys who, if the opportunity was there, they're probably going to cheat, or at least they talked about it a lot. And of course, I didn't get to see the other perspective. Maybe women were talking the same way, but did you see a gender difference in your research?
The low barriers to entry is that idea. So traditionally, men travel more for their jobs. They are more able to have more free time in their day still. So those are those opportunities. Those are the reasons and spaces that we see that. It's really does, though, overall come down to people who feel chronically unseen, rejected, or lonely. So it's like we talk about push versus pull variables to cheating. So people who feel pushed into it versus people who are like allured by this other person or this other great opportunity. And people who feel pulled or tend to be more male versus people who feel pushed into that they're being pushed out of the relationship with and looking for something else. So
that makes a lot of sense, actually, because the push, it sounds like that's like the emotional absence, right? And that's where, they don't feel like, even when you were talking earlier, I was thinking about, like there's screens, there's also like, and I'm not saying the cheating was involved in this. I'm just talking about, like, my husband worked night shift for 12 years and he was sleep deprived for 12 years. And so when he was working, he was not checked out, but he seemed like in a daze almost, like he was going through the motions, getting what he needed to get done. But it was like a different person. And so when he started working day shift, I'm like, there's the guy I married. He's back, right? And so I think that's a piece that, like, I was grieving the person that I married, and I didn't know that it was because he was sleep deprived for 12 years, right? I just thought he was unhappy, you're checked out. I didn't know. And he's literally like working against biology. And I think so many people don't realize that, especially, first responders. I think they have high divorce rates. And a lot of that is probably the crazy hours that they work, sleep deprivation. And I think women are generally going to be more prone to filling that void, the emotional void. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's just kind of what I've seen and heard.
Yeah, and a lot of times women if you have other friendships to fill those spaces where you aren't getting maybe that emotional connection with your partner, then you feel like you're losing out with that partner, but also that need is still being met. And so I think that, a very good therapist once told me that as long as you are getting the needs met in so maybe they don't want to maybe go line dancing with you, perhaps, but maybe your friends can. So like those kind of ideas of like, what are the things that you want out of life? And as long as they're being met and you have a spouse or partner that's supportive of you going out line dancing still with the friends, then it doesn't feel like it's a dissatisfaction moment.
Yeah, exactly. And I just have to say, just to reinforce what you just said, during that time, I did girls' trips, like every 3 to 6 months, we traveled somewhere. So I always had that to look forward to. And we've always lived we have our own worlds. Like we come together and we have a great rapport, but we also were two different people. And I think that helped greatly too, is that he wasn't like the only thing going on in my life, right? Like we have, I have a life outside of the house, right? So that's huge. That's huge.
And then you probably also, when you think about it, they talk about like how you talk about we. And so if you talk about like, we are great together because we support each other's ideas to do those girls trips, or like, we are great in our individual, like we are supportive of our journey, even if it's not doing everything together. Yes. And so you start to hear the dissatisfaction when people struggle to have that, it feels a little bit more chaotic.
Yeah, for sure. Ron, remember when he thought you and I had already met?
Yeah.
When we had never met, he's like, wait, you've never met Ron? I'm like, when would that have happened? Like we so have our own lives that he thought we've just been hanging out all the time in South Carolina, apparently.
Yeah, that was before we met. That surprised me.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Merissa, we did an episode, Kristin and I did, on office affairs. So we touched on this topic a little bit, but we used some specific stories that had been conveyed. I used one in particular. But Kristin said something really interesting during that, and I want to get your thoughts on it. She said working with someone is like a date because you're wearing your best clothes, you're probably on your best behavior. They don't see you, brushing your teeth or bad breath or whatever it is. And I know that falls into opportunity, but I have heard a lot of stories that working together in the closed spaces, or maybe even traveling together, we've all heard those stories. That would seem to be a strong driver, or do you think that's just not the root cause, it's just an effect of something else? What's your thoughts?
It is exactly right. Like, you're not seeing them, I don't know, trim their nose hairs, right? Like the same way, at-home stuff. Yeah. And you're also seeing them perhaps in a place where they feel like they succeed, and you're spending a lot of time in those spaces. So if you think about our work day, and we're with them more often, and also they're seeing you do well. Whereas when you get home, you're tired, you want to relive your day, or you are going to complain to that person in a way that you don't complain to the coworker. So it's a mix of opportunity. It's a mix of that feeling of like, I'm doing well in this space. And it happens 100%.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
And I've seen this a few times, and listen, I don't know for sure, but it seems like women, I've told women before, I need to refer you to the CIA or FBI. When they get suspicious, man, do they go into full detective mode. And I saw this recently. I can't give details, but I wanted to ask, will you teach me? They got so much information about their husbands. So phones, accounts, passwords. And I know there's probably a lot of people listening. Maybe you've been through this, or maybe you know someone that has. But are those reactions predictable? And is there science behind why people respond so differently in those situations when they suspect someone?
Well, our reactions are greater when we suspect. So for the bigger lies. So the research around suspicion is kind of interesting, and they say if it's a big topic to the person's, like a big issue, then you should tell them right away as soon as they become suspicious, versus wait to let them gather that evidence. But if it's a small issue, then you should wait. Like if they're suspicious about it, you should wait to tell them the information and let it phase out. So it's kind of an interesting, but what is a big issue to some is not a big issue to others. But it's like how most people, I know you're trained to detect lies with micro expressions and things, but most people figure out betrayal and lies through digging and finding that evidence, going all CSI on people.
Yeah. When you say small, though, give us an idea of what you mean by that. And I get it. It varies with people, but what would be something that's not maybe that important, or at least not to us?
It might be something small, like they said that they were going to go, that they needed to go do work, but they really went to the bar
Gotcha.
not necessarily to meet somebody, but they just needed a down night away from the home responsibilities, right? So that's something that some people would say is small, but other people might say it's a really big deal, or they didn't pay a bill on time, or, they disclosed an emotion, like they promised that they wouldn't say something to somebody, and yet they did. They kind of decided to gossip when they shouldn't have, when they were specifically asked not to. So some people think that they're big deals, and some people don't.
Yeah, that's interesting. How to measure that, right? I guess it's just going to vary per person.
100%. And then you add in things like, like personality traits. So your high level impulsivity, entitlement, narcissism, and levels of empathy. So if you're a low empathy person versus a higher empathy person, those all kind of come into play to make this big, beautiful conundrum when it comes to betrayal.
Wow, there's so much there. I'm really curious, and you touched on this earlier when you were talking about college, and let's talk about the why did they stay moment. And why do some people stay after betrayal, even multiple betrayals. So I'm not talking about like a, missed a 15-minute phone call window, type of thing. I'm talking about like actual marriage, there's cheating, we see this time and time again where I think it's more women going back, but I've seen men go back too after being betrayed by their wives. And then others walk immediately. So is it love, fear, familiarity, biology?
Good question. When you think about the nervous system, right? So the idea of when it happens, you think about going back to those basic flight, fight, freeze, and fawn. So that's, in some ways, that's a little bit of the science behind it. I mean, how do you all handle that? So if you were to get a situation that you're confronted with, do you go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn? Which of the four?
I'm a flight, unfortunately. In like life or death, I've just been like, bink, and I'm out.
Yeah.
I've told Ron that's embarrassing, actually.
I mean, because I know that I go into freeze, and then I go into fawn, because I feel like, because I pull back, which is like, I feel numb, I feel detached, I go emotionally blank, and then I like feel like I've been detached, so then I go into fawn mode. So, I mean, those kinds of things in the beginning matter. And then over time, since you kind of asked about, why does somebody stay?
Yeah.
The research would show, in part, we're able to look back and take measure of the satisfaction overall. So the more likely we are to recognize that this might be one small thing in the greater. And then investments, right? So do I have kids? How are the finances attached? Is my social circle gonna? I mean, I know somebody in Charleston that she's like, if I divorce, then I lose my the membership to the club.
Yeah.
So it's, like those kinds of things play a role as well as an identity piece. A lot of people want to be seen as somebody who's married or somebody who is in a relationship, and the idea of being alone, single is a hard space to be in. And so those are like those main pieces. And then the alternatives does come into play. Like, could I see something better? Is being alone better than being with this person? Right? Like those kinds of things play a role when it comes to like a longer term relationship. And when you think about it on a psychological level, betrayal, whether it's a person or even a company, a leadership team, when you feel betrayal, it often shatters this core belief of like, I know this person, I can trust my judgment, and even the idea that the world is basically safe. And so that's why betrayal doesn't just sting. It can feel like the ground comes out from underneath you. And so your body just kind of registers this idea as danger, not just disappointment. And we don't like to be wrong. Like we don't do well cognitively if we're walking around questioning our judgment. And that's the unfortunate thing about what betrayal does. And you hear it in a workplace. Like, I put in all this time, I dedicated myself to this, and for what? The rules are changing. And so you hear, you mentioned a little bit, Ron, just that idea of what happens when the rules of the game shift.
Yeah.
And so I usually tell people, just this idea that people talk to me all the time, like, should I stay or leave? And I say, like, staying doesn't mean that you're weak or that there's something wrong with you, and leaving doesn't mean you're cold. But it's a complex decision that's made, and sometimes there's biological things happening at play.
Right.
We've never gone into it, Chris and I haven't. I have suffered betrayal, and I think there's some long-term effects, like, you lose trust for other people. We've talked about the psychological transfer, the trauma transfer that happens all the time. I see social media posts, or if you look on a dating website, you can tell who's been injured, who's been hurt by the way they post. And it stands out like a sore thumb. So anyway, so let's get into what everybody loves, pop culture. So
yes.
we get to say these big betrayals, Tiger Woods, I watched the special on him just recently. You go back to Justin and Brittany, but the most recent one was on the Megatron, and that was at the Coldplay concert when the CEO gets caught with his head of HR on the screen. I could only imagine. Now, we laugh, and there were so many memes making fun of that, but can you imagine their spouses, the children? Like, it was horrific. But I guess what I'm leading up to, do these public betrayals have the same psychological pattern as everyday couples, or is it different? Or did you even look into that, these broad betrayals?
You know, it's a great question, because when you think about the dynamics, the ingredients are familiar. They're the same as if you're regular Dr. Ferrara, like sitting here happening versus in a public sphere. There's a breach of trust. There's a struggle over truth and image and narrative. And then the injured parties are trying to restore this sense of dignity and control. And then you've got a couple deciding whether or not to repair privately, publicly, or separate. And what's different for celebrities, of course, is that there's a layer of audience and brand involved. So thank goodness, the average person doesn't have to navigate that in the same way they do. They've got millions of people weighing in. And I did appreciate, I believe it was the wife who said, please, like, stop. Like, this is a private moment that is happening on a public sphere. We didn't ask for this, right? Like, I love that she came out in that instance.
Yeah.
Right. But you've got you've got branding issues tied to this breakup or staying together, and PR narratives that have to come out. So, I mean, in general, though, it still comes down to this idea, was anything real? Can I ever trust you again? Does this mean, what does this mean about me? And the partner who betrayed still has to decide, am I willing to be radically honest, transparent, and accountable over time?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if you guys have heard of Cafe Anderson. He's a country singer, and he did Mr. Red, White, and Blue, really famous song. But his wife, and they even had their own reality show on Netflix. I had him on my show about 3 years ago at this point. And at that time, his wife had been battling stage 4 colon cancer for years. And she ended up battling it. She just passed away last week after a 7-year battle. But he did betray her, and they ended up getting divorced within the last year. And I think that, I watched the comments, and because I like him as an individual. I like her as an individual, right? Like, it was sad to see he made, betraying somebody, especially when they're dying, like, that's a next level. And then you have the public stage, right? And so, what are your thoughts on, and have you done any research into people that betray when the loved one is sick or has a terminal diagnosis? How does that play into the decision?
God, it's so hard. I've had friends who've had those similar decisions to be made because they just don't feel seen, heard. They're carrying a burden, and the immense guilt that they feel, and they have a harder time than others in justifying it. So that's one of those pieces. Like, so they're less likely to do that on some level. So the promising change. So you think about, like, communication elements after betrayal happens. Do they make excuses? Do they justify? Do they apologize? Do they promise change? So you can look at some of those ingredients, and what we see is that some of those things aren't a part of that narrative when the person is sick.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine the complexity is off the charts. Ron, were you going to say something?
Well, I was going to just ask another question. So
yeah, well, I'm just curious because we hear the term "once a cheater, always a cheater." Would you say that that's true?
Hey, Merissa, before you answer that,
Yeah.
I have the same question. I want to add one little component to it. Chris and I have been doing this so long we think alike. So and I've seen this, by the way. You talked about small betrayals. I didn't pay the bill, or I've got hidden bills. I've been using a credit card. I didn't let you know, up to an affair years later. Is it like crack cocaine? Is it like a gateway drug, or you meet someone who's been lying as a child and it just continues and ultimately leads to that? And that might be similar to, what was your question again, Kristin? I want to make sure.
The once a cheater, always a cheater sentiment.
Yeah.
And so actually, Ron, if anybody's listening, I always say one of the best things you can do is take the attachment styles scale. because that will help you kind of connect your behavior patterns in relationships with kind of what you grew up with. So there's a secure attachment style. Like there's these different style, avoidant anxiety, like information that will help you understand, because of how you grew up, how it's feeding into your relationships for sure. But the once a cheater, always a cheater, past behavior is a strong predictor of future behavior, but not a life sentence. So people who have cheated before are statistically more likely to cheat again than those who never have. That's true across many studies, but patterns repeat. You really want to think about it. Are there underlying issues that haven't been addressed? So if they cheated before, then they need to address those underlying issues, i.e. usually therapy. The second thing are like a lot of self-help books. Does the person minimize the impact of what they did? So are those justifications happening? Are they, putting, where are they, or how much onus of the responsibility they're putting on themselves? And the accountability, and sometimes it just takes a simple change in habits, kind of not to say, but like the idea of like, I shouldn't be working nights, or I was working too much, or I need to change jobs so that I'm not around this situation, or I'm like, so some of those things help, but we absolutely see people who do not repeat the pattern. So listen up if this is you or you're dating somebody like this. You want somebody who is good with self-confrontation. So gets deep and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
They understand what they did and what it cost them. Are they developing skills, so interpersonal skill training to deal with conflict, stress, desire, boundaries? Are they, transparent and accountable, and then their internal motivation? So those are all the like major predictors of if they stop.
Okay.
Yeah, and that corresponds. Before I was academy director, I was a state and U.S. probation officer, and we would look at criminogenic needs, and a lot of studies like, we used to think if you got someone to counseling and if you got someone a job that, that's going to help them succeed in supervision, and it turns out it didn't. We found out the biggest need was criminal thinking. So these people, this is an old illustration. The kids are opening gifts under the Christmas tree, and the dad's an alcoholic, and he's pretending to be there, but he's trying to figure out a way to get out to the truck to get another drink. So there's that second conversation going, and we saw that in criminal behavior. And I think that could apply in betrayal, because of course they betray their own family, and there's different personalities, thrill seekers and all that, but most of them started being dishonest, and like you said, there was no self-correction. They just do things, and I think that aligns well with what we realized with, and by the way, the second factor in looking at criminal behavior was relationships. So a job didn't do it, all of that. It's the way they think and who they hang around with. And I think that applies especially, I can't speak to the female perspective, but if guys are around guys that cheat, it seems like it rubs off at some point. I may be too simple. That may be too simple, but it seems that way. Any thoughts on that, Merissa?
We're talking red flags.
We're talking adult peer pressure. Red flags. We are talking. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. What are the biggest communication red flags that people overlook? Like, is there something? Because I like that you're talking to listeners. We do have a few, and we want them, if you are dating someone, to be armed and ready for this.
Yeah. Put some tools in the tool belt.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's one of the hardest things is we talk about, it's so great to we talk red flags, green flags, beige flags, right? And I like when it comes to relationships, the slow, subtle, it's the day-to-day stuff that we miss that starts to spiral into bigger things. And one of the best things I can do, like John Gottman has something called the love map, which I really love. And I know Ron, I harp on it all the time. It can be modified for managers of companies. You don't have to call it the love map because that's a little bit weird in a workplace. But the goal of it is this idea of, it's almost like the 20 questions. So We do a lot of that when we start dating somebody and getting to know them. Like, what are their favorite colors? What's their favorite restaurants? Who are their friends? What books are they reading right now? What are their greatest, accomplishments in their careers? What do they want out of life? And so we love doing that in the beginning, but we forget to update that regularly. And so if we don't do that regularly, then we're kind of existing on this old information. And so we're like, oh yeah, we know. And you're like, actually, you don't know me. Like those aren't my current answers. And I don't know why we like turn in our phone every couple of years to get the iPhone update, but we don't do that same thing with our romantic partners and our friends, our good friends. And so that's what happens over time, is that we're existing on old information. And so we compliment based on old information. We ask questions based on old information. So if my husband doesn't know the courses I'm teaching, what grade level, like, so am I teaching the freshmen? Am I teaching the seniors? Like, you start to feel like you don't know me. You don't care. Yeah. You don't know me, which means you don't care about me, which means why should I care about you? Which means I'm not going to stop what I'm doing when you come in the door, and all of those things lead to this level of criticism and contempt that kind of starts to erode the relationship over time, making it thus easier to look for somebody else.
Interesting.
Yeah, it really is. Do you want to dive into the next one?
Yeah. We'll transition a little bit to some leadership stuff. Sure. It's a leadership podcast, and like I said, I've had the privilege of training with Merissa. We've trained a couple different places, Texas primarily. So we see betrayal type dynamics everywhere, workplaces, teams, friendships. What would you say to managers, leaders, and what could betrayal look like from a management standpoint? Or maybe it's it could be the provost. It could be all dynamics. What are some things that you have seen that would be considered betrayal that maybe, we talk about love bombing. I know people get betrayed, then they get love bombed, and then they're right back into this loop, this cycle. What advice would you give leaders?
It's a great question. I think one of the most important things that I would try to emphasize is that betrayal is really about a broken trust and violated expectations. And it doesn't matter. It matters more if those expectations are really laid out for somebody. So if there's a rubric or a document that is there for everybody. But it's even more painful. It's also equally painful when those expectations haven't been laid out. So we always say that effective communication is, I may send out a message, but the receiver is receiving something. So even if I like, for instance, every Tuesday, my department chair sends out this, Tuesday memo to all the faculty, and at the bottom he puts these kudos, and he picks a couple faculty members to and while it doesn't fully matter, right? Like, we're all looking to see if our names are going to be in there. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
So I don't know what his does he have and I have kids, so it's like, okay, am I evening out all of the kudos? Am I giving good jobs for them and and so I think that there's those kinds of things where he might not even realize that somebody, it's like, wait, I did something cool this week. Why did you not notice it? Why didn't you put it in there? Or they've been called out 3 times and I've only been called out 1 time. And so I like to give those examples because sometimes those are the ones that you don't even realize it wasn't a thing. It's not a rule. He doesn't have to do it, but all of a sudden, so those things hurt as much as when a leader's promised a promotion or raises that don't follow through. Taking credit for somebody else's work, right? Publicly praising and privately undermining. So those kind of things are, to me, those are those subtle ones. And or you're like, wait, why did they get the good class time? Or why did, it just kind of, it's interesting. You're you start to realize, I'm are they playing favorites? What's going on there? And so as soon as I start to dig, you have to put yourself back and check and say, this person is managing 20 plus employees and they are doing the best they can with what they have. And so if I want kudos, then I need to does he know? He hasn't asked me, but also I could tell him. So I am part of, I think, being a good employee and a supportive like employee is letting them know that these are the things that are going on so that they're aware.
If I could,
I love that. Yeah. And
I
then
could
I want to
jump in.
piggyback. Yeah.
well, mine is personal. This triggers me a little because there's two perspectives. There's the employee and the manager. And like you said, there could be multiple factors. And we all know that direct communication, clear communication, expectations is, the highest form. But I had someone who had a family member pass away. And in my mind, I wanted to make sure I talked to them, and I wanted to make sure that it was okay for me to say that in an update, like so-and-so lost a sibling. And it turns out I was unable to reach her, so I didn't send the email. I spoke to her late that night. The next morning, I did email. I find out a week later she's offended at me. So I did bring her and I waited, of course. I'm not going to talk to anybody during funerals and all that. I let some time pass, but I did have kind of a heart-to-heart, and this person she was deeply hurt. And even, there was no way for me to win that. I was saying, I want to honor your privacy. She didn't see that. She said, we post, if somebody has a family member die, we've always posted it. So it was a no-win there. And there are situations like that. And then another person did keep score that, at the end of a successful firearms class or a safety class, which is defensive tactics, I would say, congrats. I did a weekly update every week. And I would say, congrats or whatever. Well, this person literally, in a hearing that I'm not allowed to go into, a complaint was filed. And guys, I was Academy Director for a long time before you judge me. And when you manage a lot of people, there's things that happen. And of course, you're going to get my perspective, his perspective, but I couldn't believe it. Pulls out a chart. You commended firearms 5 times and safety 3 times. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm going, what? Are you kidding me? But that was his reality. And by the way, that meant that I wanted firearms to succeed, but I didn't want defensive tactics to succeed. Not even understanding if any component of that academy fails, I'm responsible.
Yeah.
So I feel better. Thanks to both of you. Let me take a few breaths.
And I'm going to say that that's nuts too. And that's coming from someone who used to count how many Christmas presents I had versus my sister under the Christmas tree. I got real ticked off if she had more than me. I'm like, I'm older. Like, what's going on here? This isn't cool. So I think that's crazy too. But I just wanted to piggyback because you were talking about something that really this resonated with me. I did not like this girl named Lori. She was one of my And here's the funny thing with that is because she was recognized constantly by leadership, right? So we were peers, we both led teams, and I swear almost every email was praising her for this and for that, and I immediately was like, I don't like this girl. So we're actually dear friends. I was her maid of honor in her wedding, and I introduced her to her husband. But it just took me giving her a shot. But the whole thing is I addressed it with my market manager. I was like, what's up with this Lori gal? Like, why do you what's the deal? Like, you recognize her almost every week. And he's like, she's just incredibly polished. I'm like, just so you know, everyone else is like, who's this brown noser, right? I'm like, it can actually backfire because someone like me and all my friends, my manager friends, we were like, we don't want to like this chick because clearly she's brown nosing and that's how she's getting. And that wasn't the case. She was just incredibly talented, and the manager overpraised her publicly and actually pitted her against her peers for doing that. And again, we're dear friends today. She is an incredible, intelligent woman and very successful. But it's not always a good thing. So there needs to be balance.
Yeah. There really does. And I met Lori, and I actually like her.
Oh, yeah.
I like her better than you, Kristin.
You like her better than me? I know. There you go. Send her a recognition email, Ron.
I'm kidding. Oh, gosh. I couldn't resist. I try to bust her chops at least once per episode, Merissa.
Good for you.
Gosh.
Good to know.
Yeah, she's a worthy opponent. Trust me. Okay, look, we have Gosh, this has been so good. We could talk 2 hours. We could do a Joe Rogan special on this stuff.
I know.
Let's start to wind down here. If anyone, like, how is trust rebuilt? Let's put it that way, Merissa. And it could be small things like you talked about, or it could be more extensive. But is there any advice? And I know therapy, and you were not asking you to provide therapy, but are there some general characteristics or some things that you've seen or your research showed that could rebuild trust?
In the leadership space, in general,
I think in general.
Okay. The clear acknowledgement. So not vague, but it's more of the here's what I did or allowed to happen. Here's how I'm recognizing that it has affected you and others. Right? I understand why it felt like betrayal. So, and that's really important because sometimes it's in the eye of the beholder. And so what one person thinks is a betrayal is not seen that way for somebody else. So it doesn't start to heal without that admission of accepting a piece of the responsibility, or then it becomes more of a kicking the ball around together situation versus then somebody feeling like they're being thrown dodgeballs, that they're, so that's an important pivot. So the more you can say, here's my role in this, here's what I allowed to happen. So those kind of narratives are really important. Step 2 is kind of that transparent explanation without defensiveness. So, and that's really hard for people to be like, here, like we want to justify, we want to explain, or we want to like overdo that. And it's important to say it without a defensive stature. And then I would say provide meaningful accountability. So here's how I'm going to move forward, and then show that consistency over time, and give space for emotion. I mean, that's hard. And a lot of people that I talk to who've gone through, especially more of the cheating behavior, the infidelity situation. And you all probably know too with grief, like it happens, it comes in waves. There's no set time for that kind of thing. Like one of my friends was in an infidelity moment, her husband was doing a wonderful job of all of these steps. But when it came to like hearing about it, he's like, oh my God, I get it. It's been we've been hashing this out. Like, can't you get over it already? And it just doesn't work that way.
Sometimes the answer is no. I
Yeah.
cannot.
Yeah.
But if they're trying to work it out, there is a point. I did kind of work with a couple who the husband cheated, the wife brought it up. If they disagreed about the trash, taking the trash out, it went right back to the affair. And I'm sure therapists say the same thing, but at some point you got to work through the steps of forgiveness and move on, because I'm not saying it's not difficult, but you can't revert back to that over every argument. Like it wasn't working, and they were headed for divorce because of that. But fortunately, at least on the outside, what I'm told, they finally got beyond it, and
That's amazing.
wasn't brought up every day.
I can imagine that's incredibly difficult. And it's almost like you just have to give it to God at that moment, because that level of betrayal, I can't even fathom. I want to know, so how can people reach you or secure your services, people that are listening, for speaking, coaching, etc.? And let's answer that. And then I have one final question for you.
Well, great question. I would say call Ron. He'll put us in touch.
Nice. We do have the email in the show notes. And
Perfect.
then you mentioned, we'll have to add in the show notes, you mentioned, I don't know if you jotted it down, Ron, I did not, but there was a name of a test or something where people can understand their, I don't know, like their background, how their background impacts.
So attachment style scales is a really good thing to learn. It's got a lot of really great peer reviewed research supporting it. And then if you go to John Gottman's, he has a really wonderful website with a really active blog. And you want to look, just search for the Love Map. like that's a really great thing. And then just do yourself a favor and notice. I always call it it's called turning towards. So when somebody, like, there's all these little bids from your partner, from your friend, and things like that throughout the day. How often do you, instead of like, for instance, I have teenagers, and I'll be like, hey, anybody want to go for a bike ride? And like, right, it's like, okay, like that's like it's a yes, but it sounded like a hell yes, right? Like you want to just do yourself a favor. And like when they come in the room, like how many times I'm like, oh, I just got to finish up this quick email or send off a quick text. Like just be a really good partner to all of your people, and like set aside things when you can, and give them the full, heck yes, love to. Just like there's a whole host of research around bids. When somebody gives you a bid, like is like anything they're doing to say, hey, even if they send you a funny meme and you don't take the time to smiley face it or something like that right away.
Yeah.
Those are those little moments that help. If trust has been broken, it helps repair trust. It's I see you, I know you, I hear you, I appreciate you. All of those little things. And they kind of start with those moments of bids. So if you're, a lot of times after you've been, betrayed, you're less likely to put yourself out there, even in small ways, because you don't want to get shot down. You don't know if you can trust yourself. And so give out the little bids, and then do a good job of responding in a positive way. And that's really what it comes down to. Trust is a repair process,
Yeah.
It's not a one big speech.
Even if there hasn't been betrayal, like what you're saying right now is so impactful, because I remember watching The Bachelorette, and literally she was divorced. She was married to a police officer in Oregon. He cheated on her with like his partner or something. I don't even know where they were. But she said, I wish that when he came home, I would have gotten off the couch and gone over to him. And you know what? After I heard that, I've made a point for the last, 12, 15 years, however long ago that episode aired. When he comes home, I drop whatever I'm doing. I'm like, hey, and I go give him a big hug. And sometimes I run to him like, some 1950s, like, hey, babe, and he loves it. And so I think it's just like, especially for someone in that type of a career, you need to have that be their safe space. And then there's one other, my daughter comes home from tennis, and it's so funny. I started hiding where I would jump out at her when she came in the door and I didn't do it. She's 14. I was like, okay, I didn't do it for like 1 week. And then literally she goes, hey mom, are you going to jump out at me? I'm like, do you want me to? I'm like, I thought like the jig was up, and she's like, no, I think it's fun. So then it's like, those little things, it's like, you don't think that they're making an impact, but they are. And so
we call them rituals of connection.
Oh, is that what that is? Okay.
Look at that. Look at you doing that official thing that science says we should do.
So I'll be jumping out at her until she tells me to stop, I guess.
Yes.
I love
She's
it.
like, all right, I'm over it. But yeah, so that's so
all right.
fun. This is great.
Again, we could go forever here. We'll try to
Don't
do this
cut
again.
me off, Ron.
We'll do this again. Hey, don't jump out of the closet and scare your police officer husband. Trust me.
No, I don't need to get that. Probably wouldn't end well.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. We hope you'll like, share, and we are growing. We're close to sponsorship. We're really excited about that. We appreciate all of you that help us out. And Dr. Merissa, of course, I'm going to be working with you, but this was so good, so interesting, and we'll keep you up to date on the kind of responses that we get and things like that. But yeah, it was really cool.
Great. Yeah, very entertaining, eye-opening. Listeners are really going to feel seen through this and heard. So I really appreciate it. And anyone listening, share this out. Like this right here, even if there hasn't been betrayal, there's so many nuggets in here that are just helpful in relationships in general.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, everybody, be the leader you're meant to be.
We'll see you next week.
The Dirty Side of Leadership podcast is brought to you by Forward Operations. If you'd like to book Ron or Kristin for speaking events, training, or executive coaching, visit forwardoperations.com. Be the leader you're meant to be.